Let's get really honest for a second. You know what no one tells you about living alone as a woman? It's not the empty rooms that break your heart. It's the silence that forces you to hear your own. And maybe that's what scares us most. Because when no one's watching, when no one's filling the space, the only person left to meet is yourself. I remember my first night living alone so vividly, it still feels like yesterday. And I remember I closed the door behind me, and the sound of the lock clicking into place echoed through the apartment like a drumbeat. That one small sound felt enormous. I set my keys down on the counter, turned around, and took in the quiet, empty space. No laughter from a roommate, no familiar shuffle of a partner's footsteps, just me, standing in this space that was now mine and mine alone. At first, I tried to pretend it felt exciting. I opened drawers, arranged a few books, turned on some soft music, but eventually I had to sit down. And in that moment, I realized there was no one else to fill the silence. It wasn't the empty rooms that unsettled me. It wasn't even the fear of being alone at night or the thought of a shadow outside my window. It was the deeper, heavier realization: there's no one else here to distract me from myself. I sat there with that silence, and it felt deafening. My thoughts, which I'd managed to drown out for years with noise, busyness, other people's stories, they all rose to the surface. All at once. The questions I didn't want to face showed up like uninvited guests. Who are you when there's no one to perform for? What's left when no one's looking? Are you enough for yourself? And that's the part no one warns you about when you move in alone. They talk about the practical things: how to set up your internet, where to buy cheap furniture, how to install a smoke detector. But no one prepares you for that first night when your own heart feels like it's echoing off the walls. There's a reason this moment feels so raw. Psychology tells us that silence strips away the masks we wear to belong, to please, to blend in. When you're truly alone, there are no roles left to play, no one to impress, no one to save you from the truth of your own reflection. It's just you. And that can feel terrifying. But here's what I've learned, sitting in that silence. The quiet isn't empty. It's full of all the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, full of your real voice, finally loud enough to hear. And if you can be brave enough to stay in that stillness, to stop running from it, you'll find that it holds the key to the kind of strength no one can give you and no one can take away. There's a moment that stays with you. The first time someone hears that you live alone and their face changes. It's subtle, but you see it. That soft, almost involuntary tilt of the head. That small, forced smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. And then the words, spoken like they're offering sympathy instead of conversation. Oh, you live alone? I can't tell you how many times I've stood in that space between their words and my own racing thoughts. In that split second, the shame would rush in like a tide. Do they think I'm lonely? Do they wonder what's wrong with me? Do they see me as less because no one claimed me? At first, I tried to fill that space with explanation. I'd smile too brightly and say, I'm focusing on my career right now, or I just really love my independence. I'd offer these rehearsed lines, hoping to smooth over their discomfort and mine. But deep down, I wasn't trying to convince them. I was trying to convince myself. Because if I'm honest, their looks mirrored my own fears. The fear that maybe I hadn't been chosen because I wasn't good enough. That maybe living alone wasn't a choice, but proof of some invisible failure. And this is what so many of us carry silently. The world teaches women to measure our worth by our relationships. We're praised when we're attached, pitied when we're alone. Even the word alone gets tangled up with ideas of brokenness. But here's the truth no one tells you. Living alone as a woman isn't a mark of rejection. Sometimes it's the bravest, most intentional choice you can make, because it means you're refusing to settle. It means you're willing to face the discomfort of people's pity rather than lose yourself in a relationship that doesn't honor you. It means you've chosen to build a life that fits you, not one that simply fits into other people's expectations. Psychology tells us we're wired to belong. And yes, connection is vital to our well-being, but belonging doesn't mean sacrificing your truth for approval. Belonging starts inside. It starts with choosing yourself, even when the world tells you to be ashamed of it. So now, when someone gives me that look, I don't shrink. I don't rush to explain. I let the silence hang there because I know what they don't. Your worth isn't measured by who's standing beside you. It's measured by how firmly you stand with yourself. There are nights that come out of nowhere. Quiet, ordinary nights when everything seems fine on the surface. You're brushing your teeth, scrolling your phone, tidying up after dinner. And then, like a wave crashing without warning, it hits. That deep, hollow ache in your chest. The kind of loneliness that makes the walls feel like they're closing in. I've been there. Those nights when the weight of the empty space beside you feels unbearable. When you glance at the other pillow and wish it weren't so perfectly untouched. When you want, more than anything, for someone's voice to break the stillness. Someone to ask, "How was your day?" Or, "Are you okay?" And here's what I need to say out loud, because too few of us do. I used to think that feeling this way meant I was failing at being strong. That if I were really independent, really empowered, I wouldn't feel this longing. That wanting companionship meant I wasn't as whole as I pretended to be. But the truth is far gentler than that. Loneliness doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. We are wired for connection. Our nervous systems are literally built to seek safety in the presence of others. There is no shame in craving that. Where we get lost is when we let that craving convince us that any connection is better than none, that filling the space with someone, anyone, will quiet the ache. And I've learned, sometimes the hard way, that the wrong companionship can feel lonelier than the empty room. Psychologists call this emotional hunger, that deep yearning for connection that can cloud our judgment and make us grasp for relationships that don't truly nourish us. It's why those nights can be so dangerous. Why we reach out to the person who ghosted us, or the ex we swore we'd stop calling, or the friend who only takes and never gives. But here's what living alone has taught me. Through all those nights when loneliness felt like it would swallow me whole, the ache isn't trying to trick you. It's trying to guide you back to yourself, to remind you that connection begins inside. So now, when that wave hits, I let it wash over me. I breathe. I remind myself that I can hold this feeling without running from it. Because every time I sit with it, I build the kind of inner strength that no relationship can replace. And I whisper to myself the truth I've come to know. It's better to feel the ache of loneliness than the emptiness of losing yourself in someone who was never meant for you. It didn't happen in some grand cinematic moment. No dramatic music, no sweeping realization. It was a quiet Saturday morning. I woke up to sunlight spilling through the window. No alarm, no one else's schedule to consider, no plans made out of obligation, just me, just the day ahead, wide open. I sat there on the edge of the bed, and for the first time it truly sank in. I can do anything I want today. I could stay in bed. I could make pancakes at noon. I could walk to the park and read a book for hours. I could blast music and dance around the living room. I could sit in silence. I could repaint the kitchen at midnight if I felt like it. And right behind that rush of possibility came something I hadn't expected. Fear, not a loud, panicked fear, a quiet, unsettling fear. Because in that moment, I realized something that no one talks about when they romanticize living alone. When no one's shaping your choices, you have to own them. I couldn't blame anyone for how my day unfolded. There was no one to say, well, I would have done that, but he didn't want to, or we compromised on this. It was all on me. And that kind of freedom, it's both terrifying and beautiful. Because here's what happens when you step into that space of total agency. You start to see how much of your life you've lived on autopilot, how often you've made choices around what keeps the peace, what makes others happy, what's expected of you. And suddenly, you're faced with the raw, unfiltered question, what do I actually want? In psychology, they call this self-authorship. It's the stage when you stop living by scripts handed to you by family, culture, relationships, and start writing your own. But here's the hard part. It means letting go of excuses. It means accepting that your life is yours to shape. And that can feel overwhelming because if we're honest, sometimes it's easier to let someone else steer the ship. I remember pacing my apartment that day, caught between exhilaration and dread. The freedom was intoxicating, but it also meant I had no one to hide behind. Every choice, every regret, every joy would belong to me. And over time, I've learned to see that not as a burden, but as a gift. Because when you begin to choose for yourself, not out of fear, not out of habit, not out of someone else's expectations, you start to trust yourself. You start to build a life that reflects who you really are. So now when I wake up to that quiet freedom, I remind myself, living alone doesn't just mean having your own space. It means you get to decide who you are every single day. And that, no matter how scary it feels at first, is the kind of liberation that changes everything. It happened one of those nights when I wasn't trying to prove anything. No makeup, no carefully chosen outfit, my hair messy from the day. I was just passing by the mirror on my way to bed, bare feet padding softly on the floor. The kind of stillness that only living alone can give you. And something made me stop. Maybe it was the way the light hit the glass. Maybe it was that I was too tired to keep looking away like I usually did. I stood there and actually looked. Not just a quick glance to check if anything needed fixing, not that critical eye searching for flaws. I looked at myself, the way you might look at an old friend you haven't seen in years. And what hit me wasn't judgment. It wasn't disappointment. It was tenderness. For the first time in so long, I didn't flinch at my own reflection. I saw the woman who'd been through so much. The woman who stayed when others left. The woman who learned to comfort herself through heartbreaks and heavy nights. The woman who locked the door behind her and built a life in that quiet space. And I realized how rarely we really see ourselves when we're always surrounded by others. How much of the time we're performing, not consciously maybe, but always shaping ourselves for the gaze of someone else. A partner, a friend, a parent, a stranger on the street. We get so used to adjusting, softening, shrinking, or inflating ourselves to fit what we think they want to see. But when you live alone, and that's where the quiet bravery begins, because it's one thing to love the version of yourself reflected in someone's admiration. It's another to love the version staring back at you in the unguarded moments, in the soft light of an ordinary night, when there's no one watching but you. Psychologists talk about self-compassion, the ability to offer yourself the kindness you so easily give to others. And research shows it grows strongest when we stop judging ourselves through the imagined eyes of the world and start seeing ourselves as we truly are, human, imperfect, worthy. That night, standing in front of the mirror, I felt it. That brave, quiet moment where you choose, without fanfare, without witnesses, to say to yourself, "You're enough. You've always been enough." And maybe that's the hidden gift of living alone. It invites you over and over again to meet yourself where you are and to choose love even when no one else is looking, especially then, because that's the kind of love that lasts, the kind that can't be taken away, the kind that holds you steady no matter what. Living alone as a woman isn't a failure. It's a radical act of self-love. It's saying, I will not fill my life with noise just to silence my own voice. And that is courage.